Coming to you live from a peaceful glade in the enchanted forest just off the Antrim Road, it's this week's Apocalypse. I'm your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Ferris. John, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. Well, maybe. I'm not sure. It's like, part of me's just in awe at all this wonder, but another part of me is absolutely terrified that I might get eaten or gutted.
Yeah, the monsters or whatever you want to call them, the denizens. I think they prefer the term denizens.
Yeah.
The denizens of the enchanted forest are very fickle in their ways.
Yeah.
You know, they flip-flop quite easily between being sort of benevolent and malign.
Yeah, piss on the wrong tree and you get skewered.
Yeah, or cursed with a pox. That's a fun one. They love that shit. Yeah. Or like you grow a third arm, or I don't know, like all your legs fall off.
Yeah.
You know, however they feel at the time. Yeah, so every direction out of here is like something's rustling in the bushes here and there, and I don't really know which way to go or which way. They love setting challenges and things like that, or sometimes they just lure you into a bush and eat you.
Yeah.
You know, so I hear.
If we can manage to do 3 tasks, maybe, that might help.
Oh really? Oh right,
yeah.
Okay. So that's the traditional number. It's like the Nintendo rule of 3 for a boss fight.
Yeah, I mean that's been a fairy tale thing for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, actually, usually
the rule of 3
is like the rule of 3, or answer these 3 questions, do these 3 things, bring me these 3 weird objects from around the land, kind of crap. Yeah. So I was thinking, we seem to have we're sort of cut off. I can hear the motorway in the distance, I know civilization is not too far away, but again, these guys, they like to maze people, so that could be an illusion. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure if we strike out in that vague general direction, maybe we'll get to civilization. But I think we need to be prepared before we do that. We need to find out, because we might encounter anything along the way, and we need to know if we're going to be deceived, if we're going to be, lured, whether or not, the things they tell us to do are good things or bad things.
Yeah, we need to prepare. We need to ready ourselves.
Yeah, you never know, because they could be trying to trick us into doing something that's not perhaps in our best interests. So,
well, how about, because we're trying to, play by their rules, we go for this rule of 3.
Indeed. Very clever.
Yeah.
Beat them at their own game. You've already found the solution. Okay. Well, that being the case, I've noticed that despite the fact that we are cut off from civilization, there's not a lot going on around here. We have a really great Wi-Fi reception.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet. So, we have access to some pretty good streaming services here. So, I've got a couple of things queued up here that might help us out.
Nice.
So we could sit around my phone and we could watch Graham Baker's Beowulf from 1999.
Oh, that's bound to be a great pick. Like, Beowulf was one of the classic legends of all time.
Yeah, I mean that is literally one of the classics.
Yeah,
the things that they apply that literal word to.
Well, we might not even need the other 2.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume not. It being the classics, but sure, we'll queue up these other 2 anyway, just in case,
just to be safe.
Yeah, so I've also got Ridley Scott's Legend from 1985.
Judging by the title, that's going to be useful.
Legend, indeed. Yes, legendary creatures. Yeah, legend as in something written down, stories. Ooh, yeah. And then I've also got, if that's not enough, which I can't imagine it wouldn't be enough, but if that's not enough, I also have Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth from 2006.
Okay,
here.
That's Plan C here,
Pan is a big wheel, as it were, in the legendary creature sort of oeuvre. Yeah. So anything we learn from him, I think, must be infinitely useful, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's watch these now then. Come on. All right, so what about then Graham Baker's Beowulf? John, what did you think of Beowulf?
Try my best to make Christopher Lambert laugh,
which
there is a severe lack of Christopher Lambert laugh in this movie that features Christopher Lambert.
He doesn't have a lot of joy in this. He's he's a little dour in this movie. He smiles at people wryly a lot.
I don't think anyone in this I'll answer your question now after trying to mimic Christopher Lambert. Beowulf might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and that is kind of saying something. I've seen a lot of shit movies.
That is a huge statement for you to make, John.
Yeah.
You've seen some awful garbage in your time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not above just randomly clicking on random movies on streaming services. I mean, we literally a couple of days ago just started watching a movie called Ice Spiders the other day, and
I saw a trailer for that.
It's terrible.
It was recommended. It was recommended under Beowulf for people who watch this also watch.
See, I think that's probably a sign of the type of movies that we watch now.
I imagine that's how you stumbled across it, because I watched the trailer for it on Amazon, and then I was like, "Oh my god, this looks brilliant. We should watch this at some point." But I guess you got ahead of me on that one.
So yeah, I mean that kind of is just a wee showcase of the types of movies. I mean, I will watch it. Occasionally it does kind of grind you down, and you have to watch something decent or something very good to kind of remind you that you actually do like cinema, and it is an art form and not just this horrible way of making yourself.
For every like 15 Beowulfs, you got to watch one The Godfather or something
exactly,
like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But no, this movie is horrendous. Like every again, it's very much like whenever we were talking about Uwe Boll, and I kind of said like he doesn't manage to do anything good. Like there's not one aspect of cinema that he manages to even accidentally touch on and make good. And it's very much the same thing with this. Like
it's
the set design,
a fail on every level sort of thing. You think?
Yeah, and it's sad as well because it does seem like it. And Christopher Lambert's not the only one. Like it seems like the cast generally just don't want to be there and are either phoning it in or don't have the ability to act, or maybe when you see the lines that they're given, you can kind of understand why they might have phoned it in.
Dialogue is poor.
Dialogue's
at best.
Yeah, poor is when it's at its best.
Yeah, this film is just like from the very, 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 very opening. Now, when you watch the trailer for this movie or you see anything promotional for this movie, there is a very prominent sort of thing that they're trumpeting, which is from the producers of Mortal Kombat. Now, I always take the sort of from the producers of sort of advertising stinger with a huge fistful of salt, because varying from production to production, a producer can have very, very little to do with the actual making or the quality of a film.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see like from the producers of like some really great movie, and then you'll go watch that movie and it'll be absolute dross.
Yeah.
It's just because they're trying to find a connection to a good film usually that they can use to market it. Now, Mortal Kombat was quite successful, so they probably thought, right, we'll do this. Now, I don't know how much sway the producers had in this movie, but I saw some links to the Mortal Kombat in as much as the constant, unerring, relentless, non-stop techno that was happening all the time. Like there's a few moments where there is no music at all.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, there's even during like emotional scenes, they're playing awful techno really quietly in the background. Like, oh, we'll not have emotional music. We'll just turn the techno down really low, and then that will have the same effect somehow, maybe? I don't know.
And like that in itself isn't the problem. The problem is you can use techno music all you want. Like you could kind of argue that it made sense in movies like the Hackers and things like that, because it's kind of in line with what they're doing, and that in some kind of sense. But I mean, this movie, it just doesn't gel with it. The music is really jarringly. It takes you out of it completely, and as you say, it's played constantly.
It doesn't stop, and the whole sort of the movie is very now. Beowulf is a very, very, very old story. One of the oldest recorded, written sort of stories in Saxon or Anglo-Saxon. Like from this region of the world, from the British Isles or like Scandinavia. Maybe it's hard to say. There's a lot of like argument about where it's from and who wrote it originally, because in the actual text itself, there's these weird Christian elements that people think, oh, maybe that was like, it was passed down orally, and then when they got round to writing it down, Christianity was creeping in, and so somebody put some Christian elements into it. All that stuff is not addressed in this film at all. But
they take liberties with the Beowulf story.
Yeah, so they have it. Yeah, I mean, so Beowulf, technically, if you want to talk about like the original story of Beowulf, it's probably supposed to have taken place, I don't know, like the year 500 or before, maybe something like that. Now this, it's hard to say when this is set. It seems like it's a medieval post-apocalypse. Yeah, and I only know that from looking at the description of the movie that they said it was a post-apocalypse, because most of the time they're just knights in armor running about the place, and then every now and then they have one little weird piece of technology that will just pop up.
I should correct you there. It's knights in onesies.
It's knights in onesies. Yep. Yes, you're right.
The costume design is also terrible.
The costume design is terrible. Oh my, you want to talk about the costume design in this movie? Okay, let's just leapfrog onto that. So
it's something we rarely talk about as well. But
yeah, it's terrible. It's inconsistent and extremely exploitative at times, to the point where it was aggravating. There is an actress at the very beginning of the film. Now, I've seen her in other things.
Rona Mitra?
No, not her. No? Before we even meet her.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
The first lady that we meet in the movie, who is... Sorry, I'm just going to get her name here.
Oh, you mean the girl who plays Marta in Arrested Development?
Yes, in Arrested Development. Yes. Patricia Velasquez, right? Yeah. So... Everyone's all medieval in the castle, but for some reason she's dressed as a sexy secretary. Yeah. To the point where they literally have an upskirt shot of her jumping down so we can see her stockings and suspenders and her underwear. Yeah. At one point when she's escaping the castle for no reason, they keep flashing us her underwear constantly during a scene in which she's going to be executed by a comically oversized straight razor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other... Sorry to derail us yet again, but that's the other thing. All the props in this look really cheap and crap.
That thing looks like it's made out of plastic with spray-painted metal paint on it. Yeah, so that's bad. So the costume design... Mainly, the costume design on the women in particular is terrible. So Rona Mitra's outfits... There is one point at which Rona Mitra shows up for dinner in her underwear and a trench coat. That's what she's wearing. Yeah. She's wearing a transparent dress, completely transparent. Yep. And a leather trench coat over it. And then, of course, to say nothing of Grendel's mother, who's basically just naked. The
80s porn star.
Right, so that's the women. The women get treated extremely badly in the costuming department. Then the men are for that much better, but at least it's less exploitative. Their stuff just looks like crap.
Yeah, especially there's like the captain of the guards, Roland or something, and he's one of these guys who's kind of in the onesie kind of armor. It's meant to be armor, but it is just this onesie, and there's not a point where he does not look horrendously uncomfortable. And
his facial expressions, he's always uncomfortable. And the way he stands, he seems like it doesn't fit him correctly, because he's a fairly tall guy as well, and maybe they just didn't make allowances for his height.
And you get the impression that he's meant to be kind of intimidating or something, but it doesn't come across, because this man is just kind of like standing awkwardly in a onesie, and I don't care who you are, you need to have some serious charisma or some serious intimidation behind you to pull that off, and he doesn't.
Yeah, so everybody's dressed terribly. So that's the costuming department is bad, right? Yeah. The effects, as you say, now I don't know if would be the same. Like the prop department is equally as responsible, but everything looks fake in the extreme.
Hrothgar's like almost comically large sword. That looks like something from like a Final Fantasy game or something like that.
It's worse than that, because it's like, whenever I first saw it, I thought, because I was thinking post-apocalypse in my head initially going in, and then I lost that thread quite quickly. But the first time you see people holding weapons, his sword in particular, when you see it in silhouette, it looks like they've got like a chainsaw blade and like slam that onto a sword hilt, which would be a cool weapon. It would be a very Warhammer thing. Like if there was like, because I was thinking post-apocalypse, maybe there's like a trigger on his like sword and he pulls it and it runs the chainsaw blade and then he uses that to fight. That would be cool. But then you see it a bit closer, you go, oh no, they've just made the edges all jagged like a saw blade.
Yeah.
And then the end is just round and it looks really unintimidating. It looks like a really clumsy, awful weapon. And everyone else's weapons are kind of like that. And there's just like, it's like they got car parts and hammered nails through them for everyone else's weapons. And we're like, oh, that's like futury and medieval at once. And that all looks bad. So all the props look bad. The computer effects are awful.
Oh my God.
They have the... I assume it's all complete. I don't think it was a miniature. They have the weird fort that they live in. It's got
all I could think of every time it showed you that was the Monty Python, the Holy Grail. It's only a model.
Exactly, it's only a model. I don't know if it was even a model, if it was just CG. I don't know, but it has this sort of claw arrangement that moves with flamethrowers on it on the top of the tower that just closes and opens and shoots fire.
Yeah, it's just general like steampunk silliness.
Yeah, it serves no purpose, and you know, usually in steampunk they have like a weird lore thing where they'll throw in a wee thing about why this is like maybe it's venting from the forge or something like that.
I don't think anyone spent any time thinking about any of that with this movie.
No, but that's all nonsense. That looks terrible. The Grendel itself is a big turd. Yep. It's literally just a big turd that appears and disappears and wibbles sometimes.
And like you can tell that they've added this shimmer. They add this like shimmer effect on Grendel to make it look otherworldly, but possibly because they realized when the man got put into the rubber costumes, like that looks terrible. And this doesn't help. The shimmer effect makes it look possibly worse. And I mean, you could sum up all the set design, the prop design, the costume design, and the effects all make this look like a really badly done sci-fi TV movie, or not even movie, like maybe like a pilot for a series. It's not even that good to be, you know, like a long-running series or a movie that was made on the Sci-Fi Channel. It looks like a pilot.
Yeah, I've made this sort of comparison or used this metaphor before, but it looks like a pre-Battlestar Galactica Sci-Fi Channel original TV show.
Yes.
Like, because Battlestar Galactica is like the weird high watermark for the Sci-Fi Channel, where they suddenly were like, oh, this actually looks professional and with good production values and looks good, but everything before that was like this, you know, like... It looks kind of like that old TV show that Sam Raimi did, the Hercules and Xena.
Oh, yeah.
Those shows. It looks like one of those shows.
But at least they kind of had endearing qualities as well. Like even the bad effects, they garnered a lot of fans. And
yeah, they were campy and fun, and they were smiling through the pain the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is devoid of any humor, and like even Christopher Lambert, who's normally quite, you know, he's got a lot of charisma and he's normally quite fun to watch in movies. He just, and it seems like he's been directed. He's almost been directed to act like Batman, and he's been given these like, you know, Beowulf has all these like weird gadgets like Batman as well, but Christopher Lambert cannot pull off Batman.
He's not Batman, no. I mean, he was good as the Highlander, you know. He was a sword fighting like. He was a cool sword fighting guy who was like, you know, fish out of water sometimes, but like, he's not. It's not the same.
No,
and it doesn't work. And his gadgets all come out of nowhere just whenever they're convenient. He just has them.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't get a sense of his limitations or what he has, or it's that bullshit thing, which is kind of why I'm liking him to Batman, because a lot of times they do this with him, where his utility belt has anything that he needs.
Yep, like that famous shark repellent.
Yes,
which was done deliberately as a joke, but is kind of a joke about how Batman always has things ready to go.
Exactly. And in fact, a better comparison for this movie would be the Witcher, the games. I mainly know about. I don't know about the books that much, but this felt more like an adaptation of The Witcher than it did of Beowulf.
With like the white hair and everything.
Yeah, even the white hair, and the fact that he's like,
travels around hunting evil.
Yeah, and plus
Yeah.
they've changed Beowulf's backstory so that he's actually half demon or monster, whatever you might call it.
Or god. It's like they mention Baal being his father, which is like a demon from the Bible.
So like he's trying to suppress becoming a monster by killing monsters, which I don't understand how that works, but you know.
Yeah, his thing is like, as long as I'm fighting evil, I can't be evil, is his logic.
Yep.
So he just constantly has to be fighting something evil, otherwise he'll be evil. The end.
Yeah, it works in his head, so maybe it's like the placebo effect thing, where as long as he believes this and he goes around killing stuff.
Yeah.
But so I mean, it's much more. It's like a very low budget. Like they could have slapped the Witcher license in this, and you wouldn't have known. I don't think. You would have just thought it was a bad.
You could have shown up and said, "My name is Geralt, and I'm here to fight your evil because I know it's here."
Yeah,
and that's the thing that confused me as well. Like they never really establish, but it feels like it's happening. But like, is the monster living in the castle? Does the monster live there?
It seems to, yeah.
It seems like it lives in the castle, but they don't seem to think that it lives in the castle. But everybody outside the castle seems to think it lives in the castle. Like, they're surprised that it gets in, and it's like, where's it getting in from?
Yeah.
It seems like it lives here.
Yeah, there's no real, like, you don't get a sense of what's really happening. Like, just occasionally, Grendel just attacks, and that's it. You don't get any idea of, like, his motivations, even though the mother later explains why, but even then, it's very flimsy and very kind of broken.
Yeah, because in the original story, the Grendel is aggravated by the sounds of joy.
Yeah.
That's what the Grendel hates. So whenever they're partying and they're having a good time, Grendel gets angry and comes down and destroys and goes on a rampage, essentially, to the point where the people who live in this village have to move out.
Yeah.
Essentially, and live in the goddamn wilderness because they can't go back to their houses because the Grendel will get them.
Yeah.
And then Beowulf shows up and he's like, I'll sort this out. But in this, it just, every night, it just comes out and maybe, it seems really inconsistent. It's so poorly defined about what it does. But they say, because they initially say, at night it comes out. And then, but except this time when it did it in the afternoon. Yeah. It's changing its behavior. Is it? Well, then what are the rules then? And there are no rules. It's just, it shows up every now and then. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it doesn't bother being invisible. Most of the time it's wibbly because I assume, again, as you said, possibly to hide the terrible practical effects. Yeah. They give it that shimmer on it.
There's also like the editing's really terrible whenever they get into a fight with Grendel. They use the same, like, they have a shot of Grendel jumping towards the camera that they use about 5 or 6
times. 3
or
4 times at least. I saw that same shot come up,
and it's
again and again.
And you can see all the wire works as well on Christopher Lambert, or probably his stunt actor, I would imagine. And the amount of cuts to him flipping.
And then him landing and standing up and being like, it was me flipping the whole time.
Yeah, which again goes back to what you were saying of like those like Xena or Hercules type things. Yeah. Where they did this quite a lot, and it
was exactly the same style, just done without the sort of self-awareness or the humor that you get from a Sam Raimi production.
Exactly.
That you don't get in this. Now, they try to be funny in this. They have like a literal comic relief character who's like the assistant weapons master who becomes the weapons master. Yeah. And he's just there to sort of tell bad jokes.
Yeah.
And say things that are supposed to be funny, but he's not funny. And he fits for some reason at some point. It's
Marta, who escaped at the start there. I'm just going to call
her Marta.
Yep. Okay. She's really good in Arrested Development.
She's a good actress. She's a good actress. I've seen her give decent
She was also the mummy.
Other things. Yeah.
In the Brendan Fraser mummy.
She was in that. Yeah.
But she was actually the girlfriend of the new weapons master, and I only found that out kind of after the fact when I was kind of like, I had to remind myself what happened in this movie. So I was like reading up like the synopsis things, like, oh right, I never like caught on because he didn't react at all to
He
his
is-
beloved girlfriend being murdered at the
He's
start.
so nonplussed, but people in this film are very nonplussed
Yeah.
by people who are supposedly dear to them being dead.
I love. I was laughing out loud, LOLing apparently.
Oh my gosh.
Whenever
extreme.
Beowulf's final battle with Grendel, for some reason they made this decision to like they kept cutting to the other characters sitting at a table
Yeah, for no reason.
for no
Like,
reason,
They're just hanging
and they're doing
around, like,
nothing.
yeah, they're hanging out and having drink and eating their tea. It seems like they're just having their dinner, and just in the middle of this fight they just cut away to them standing around and complaining about stuff.
Yeah.
And then it cuts back again to the fight in progress.
But it
Yeah,
happens like 3
it
or
was
4
so-
times. You're like, was this a mistake? Or
I don't know.
or
The whole
like,
film
what are we
was a
meant to
mistake.
glean from this? Like, what? Like, it's just the futility of war that like people are just don't care that you're risking your life. They're just
These
sitting
guys
there.
are just going to carry on regardless. Yeah, that was absolute friggin' nonsense.
And
Yeah.
I also loved the I forget what you call Rona's character, but she dressed the first encounter they have.
Kyra, I think, or something.
Nah, it doesn't matter.
Kyra,
first
yes,
thing-
she's called Kyra.
The first encounter Beowulf has with Grendel, he gets badly hurt, and dressing his wound is basically her just putting a napkin over it and walking away.
Yeah,
I thought that was fun.
yeah,
This movie is hard to get through, and
it is.
I was kind of hoping that it would be one of those, so bad it's good movies. But it doesn't even get to that
Yeah,
level.
it never escalates its ridiculousness high enough
Yeah.
to be fun. You're hoping for it to happen, and it just doesn't happen.
And like we've said, there's no real joy in it. There's no
No.
no one seems to be like, well, not taking things seriously, but I don't think that's, well, actually maybe that is it. Either take things deadly seriously or just go in and have a bit of fun. But it just looks like everyone was miserable. It just seems like everything to do with this movie. Apparently, I read a quote from Rona Mitra who said she said everyone warned her not to do this movie, that it would be terrible. And she actually wished she'd listened
she
to them.
was right. They were right. Like, they were really
Yeah.
right.
Because in fairness, she seems the only one who's trying a bit.
She's like giving some enthusiasm to her performance, but unfortunately the whole thing is undercut by the fact that they literally dress her up like a hooker for the entire movie.
She gets
mean,
she gets
the-
overshadowed by her own cleavage.
Indeed, yes. Like, the first time Christopher Lambert is speaking to her, he just stands there and stares at her chest. He literally looks her up and down and then just stares at her chest while he's talking to her, and that's the scene.
And we haven't even touched on the big bad at the end, the CG nightmare.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's like Mortal Kombat had some bad CG in it,
Yeah.
but you were able to get by it because the rest of the film was so daft and enjoyable, whereas this comes at the end of a slog, and suddenly you've got Grendel's mother turns into basically like the Arachnotron from the end of Doom, but with like her face on it that looks real bad. And they do a wee bit of practical effect in it, where there's a close-up of her with makeup on and it's real.
Yes.
And it actually looks kind of cool for a second, but then it zooms back out and it's a CG spider again.
Yeah.
And then you've got like him fighting it. And the way he fights it, it's that terrible sort of like, you can tell there's like two guys standing just behind the camera with like tentacles on sticks, swinging them at Christopher Lambert while he dodges from side to side and swings clumsily with his swords.
Which again
until the
should be
fight's
great.
over.
It should be that like, this is hilarious, this is brilliant, but
Yeah.
it isn't. It's,
Yeah, when that started happening, I was like, oh, brilliant, this is going to be fun now. And then it kind of wasn't. And I was a bit sad about that. Because I love a good practical effect. I love even like a good clumsy practical effect.
Yeah.
You know, like something like Carnosaur 2 when they're like attacking people. There's clearly like people being attacked by miscellaneous, slightly like velociraptor dinosaurs. And it's literally just like... it almost seems
another
like,
good example of crappy movies that we will happily watch.
Indeed, yeah. And it feels like someone has literally got like a dinosaur's head on a stick that they're just clubbing the actor with from just off camera. And that's brilliant. And that film, it works really well because the whole production is just, it's so like, it's one of those things where like them being not aware that they're incompetent makes a film great.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it was like, it was so just middle of the road with that stuff. And then it was also just terrible otherwise. That it just, there was nothing to cling on to.
Yeah, it's that, but like something like the Room, by Tommy Wiseau is so bad because he thought he was making a really amazing movie, but the thing is, you can't detract from Tommy. He was passionate about it.
Yeah, he really extremely cared about making his movie the way he wanted to make it.
Exactly, and then same goes for Birdemic movies like that, where the people who made them, they're awful, but they've got like this like they're
earnest.
And people enjoy them for different reasons than what the director intended or the writers intended. But people enjoy them. And I think that's it. Like, I don't think anyone could get any enjoyment out of Beowulf.
No, there was very, very little in Beowulf, I think.
Beowulf.
Beowulf, indeed. He's a bad mofo, and I don't mean bad like cool, like scary. I mean, it's just bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first of our 3 trials over now. I'm assuming that maybe if, as you were saying before, if we get through our 3 trials, maybe watching all of these movies and perhaps the spirits of the forest or the denizens, as I think we are now solidly calling them, might allow us safe passage and, maybe we won't be mazed trying to get out. So I think we need to quickly then move on to Ridley Scott's Legend from 1985. Ooh. John, what did you think about Ridley Scott's Legend?
Ridley Scott's Legend, for me anyway, is very disappointing. It's so much potential. It's so much potential. It has so much potential, but this is coming off. Ridley Scott has made Alien and Blade Runner at this point, so you think, wow, this is going to be fucking awesome. I always forget just how slow this movie is. But god damn, does it drag on. And
it's not even that long either.
No, it just feels it.
It's an hour and a half. It's an hour and a half.
There is a director's cut, which is 2.5.
I heard about this and I haven't seen it, and I would be quite keen to have a look at it.
Yeah.
I heard that the way I heard it was that he had some initial cut of the movie that he wanted to do, and the studio freaked out because apparently it was kind of terrifying and like a proper, almost like a horror movie. And the studio was like, no, we're trying to market this to children here. So you need to cut this down and make it less scary. Like, apparently there's like one of the characters that goes on like a killing spree at some point in the original cut, one of the goblins.
Well, also I heard, because I watched a few behind the scenes things and I was reading up a bit on it, because the actual making of it is more interesting than the movie itself. And Ridley Scott and William Hortzberg. I'm probably messing up that name. He's the writer.
I think Hortzberg, I think is his name.
Yeah. They had a load of different versions, and it started off, as you say, a lot darker and a lot more adult. I believe Lily in it was meant to kind of transform and like become almost bestial, like grow fur and stuff like that. So, the darkness was having like an influence on her. She was becoming a fairy.
Mean, there is a point where it does have a physical effect on her, but it just basically means she dresses up like a goth and has black lipstick.
But no, like it was meant to be. There's meant to be a lot more animalistic, but I can't remember if this was true or not, because you get a lot of like contradictory things and a lot of stuff that might just be people imagining or wishing. But at some point, the darkness was meant to have sex with her when she's in this kind of like furry part,
bestial form. Let's say. Yeah.
But I think, as you say, they had to make a lot of compromises with the studio, and then there was just a lot of. it seemed like Ridley Scott was just changing his mind on a lot of things as well. Judging from the behind the scenes thing, he might just be trying not to, it might be bad form to kind of say the studio made me change it. So he's kind of going, oh no, I wanted to give a bit more of a sense of childlike wonder. I don't know. I made Alien.
Yeah, I made Alien. Stop picking on me. Fair enough, Ridley. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I would give him a bit of leeway for that. Like,
oh, definitely.
One of the greatest films ever made. So it gets a free pass for on a few things, I think.
And they did have a few disasters as well, where like production had to stop because they were using the 007 studio, and I've seen a picture of it.
Pinewood, was it?
Yeah, and there was a big fire. The whole place went up. It might have been their fault by the side. I couldn't find this out. It might have been their fault because it might have been because of the in the forest scene when they have like a wee fire.
Yeah.
The Tom Cruise and the kind of fairy folk are sitting around.
They're all gathering around it, keeping warm in the terrible,
it might have been
winter.
the gases of that collecting in the ceiling, and it sparked later.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that the guy who did the special effects for this movie started a fire on a set.
Oh, right.
I can tell you that. It's Rob Bottin, the guy who did the special effects for John Carpenter's The Thing. Yay!
John Carpenter.
I get to talk about John Carpenter again, but which I think you can see in a lot of like the sort of the greasy, sort of nasty, slimy things in this. You can really see that it's him. But there was a point during the scene where they're battling the Norris thing, which we talked about last week was my favorite monster in The Thing.
Oh yes, yeah.
There's a point where they have to burn that thing, and apparently there's this weird green goo that comes out of it.
Yep.
And the stuff that they used to make that goo, they didn't think about it when they were making it, but it actually ended up being extremely flammable, and the whole thing really went up and almost exploded like a gas cylinder on the set and everything, and they had to like completely redo that whole model and remake everything because it all went up, and they had to and then they made it, they used a different sort of consistency of stuff to make the ooze instead that wasn't nearly so flammable. So I could see that maybe he didn't learn his lesson because that was like 2 years before this.
Yeah.
So maybe he didn't quite learn his lesson, or maybe started another fire.
He's like one of those old school. He should have been an alchemist. He was just born in the wrong time period. One of those mad alchemists that like is constantly blowing things up.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a special effects guy to me.
The modern day alchemist.
Aye.
But yeah, like as we're saying, like so it did. They had production problems with things like that, and then I believe it was Tom Cruise's father died around this time, and so he obviously had to take time off to grieve. So that there's a troubled production in this as well.
Yeah. Things beyond people's control. Anyway,
which I think really hindered it, but just some of the choices are very odd in this. According to Ridley Scott, they cut the story. They cut a lot of things out of the story because he or maybe someone else wanted a more traditional story, and it just seems really kind of odd to say that because so little happens in this movie that you could probably describe the entire plot of this movie in 5 lines. And and it's odd for something as I'm
gonna give that a go.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. So, princess who hangs around with the poor folk and is pure, is friends with weird furry man who lives in the forest. Is he human? Is Tom Cruise's character? He's a furry guy, right?
He is. Yeah, I believe Gump says so. He did because I was trying to listen out.
Yeah, his name's just Jack, but I guess he's like he speaks to animals and stuff. He talks to like he's able to speak the languages of animals and all that stuff. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting way off the fucking 5 sentences.
You're well over 5 sentences now.
Basic premise: goblins want to kill the unicorns because if they do, they can make night happen forever.
Yep.
And then evil will be able to walk the land.
Also, apparently, night equals winter.
Yeah, night equals winter. Apparently, yes, it just gets cold, and then they're like, yes, that's what we wanted. I guess maybe a side effect. So anyway, sorry, right. So they want to kill the goblins. Want to kill the unicorns, right?
Yep.
And then they figure, right, if we follow around this pure princess lady, she will lure in the unicorns because they're attracted to innocence and purity or something.
Yep.
Then they take it upon themselves. Haha, let's knacker these unicorns. They kill the unicorn. There's two of them. She's all like, oh no. Then for some reason they then don't kill the two of them. One of them gets away. The mayor gets away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they capture the mayor later because Tim Curry's raging at them for not killing them both. And then he needs to do a ceremony now all of a sudden to do it, to make it work, even though he didn't before.
It's never really explained either.
No, it isn't. So then he captures the mayor and takes it down, and then your woman, Lily, the princess, decides, I'm going to go dandering down here as well for no good reason, because I'm sorry, I guess. And then Tom Cruise, Jack, has to go on a quest to save the unicorn. And then they do that, and there's japes along the way, and it's quite tedious. And the japes aren't fun. And they have to destroy the darkness with sunlight.
Yeah.
That's the story of the film. Now, I did so many
maybe more than 5
there.
sentences.
No, I probably could have done that in 5 sentences, but I kept going off on tangents. And I'm sorry, but it is actually a simple premise. They have to rescue the unicorn.
You can edit it in post.
No, I won't. I'm going to leave that in. Again, show your shame, John. Show your shame. So they have to rescue a unicorn to stop night falling forever from darkness. And that's that. And Jack, Tom Cruise, is the chosen one.
I mean, as you touched on in your mad tirade there, there is a pacing problem in this movie that, you know, very little happens for a long time. And they will waste so much time just like focusing on things that you don't really need to, with like this like ethereal music playing. You know, they watch the unicorns dick about for.
Did you just say urethral music?
Ethereal.
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 Not urethral.
Ethereal.
Music actually, from the music of my urethra.
I think that's more fitting, actually.
Yeah, maybe. Piss music. Hey.
But yeah, so it's just kind of odd, and like even the scenes that should be like there's no tension in scenes like the prison scene where they're trapped and they're trying to how do we get out of this, and there's no tension even with the big bog witch that.
Yeah, which is super cool looking and actually scary. And then it's like, whatever. Just cut its head off the end. Yeah. Like, that's what I'll say about this film. There's a lot of, like, again, it's Ridley Scott. And we've said this about Ridley Scott before, whenever I went off on one about Alien Covenant and Prometheus. He knows how to, like, technically make a film incredibly well. Like, he can make a film look really good.
Yeah.
You know, this film is well shot and lit and all that stuff, and the effects look very, very, very nice when they use them. They look great. Like, the practical effects in this, again, the Rob Bottin is a brilliant effects guy.
Yeah. And
has done great work in the past. So all that stuff's great. Some aspects of, like, on a technical level, it's grand. It's just that the narrative is so all over the place.
Yeah.
And again, it's pacing. You could see the longer version of this, that making sense, whereas like that sort of not a lot happening at the beginning could ramp up in the same way that a film like, say, Alien, not a lot happens at the beginning of Alien. It's very slow and plodding, and it builds up to something. Whereas this sort of is very slow and plodding, and then suddenly things are happening.
Yeah.
All out of nowhere. Which you could see, like, if this is like a 2.5 hour movie, you could see that even actually working.
Yeah, even the action is fairly stilted as well. It never feels like a good payoff. But just what you said there, I completely agree with, where like the cinematography and the actual look and feel of the world that they've created is brilliant. which again, it just keeps adding to this whole wasted opportunity feeling that you get from this movie of like, it if you take any still of this movie, it looks like it's an illustration from a fairy tale book.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It looks brilliant. There's like, I don't know exactly what they're doing with the saturation, but it works. It works very well for it. And even when we get to the darkness's lair, everything's foreboding. The set designs are immense and they're brilliant, and it's so fitting for all the characters, and you get a very good sense before you even see the darkness of what he's all about, and it all kind of gets squandered, unfortunately.
It does. And like, now you're bringing up, like, before you even see the darkness, when you do see the darkness, like, let's just talk about Tim Curry for a while. He's brilliant.
He's wonderful in this.
He is brilliant. His lines are all actually pretty good. Or maybe it's just the way he's delivering them that makes them great. But he's so imposing and creepy in like he's creepy in a way that Tim Curry has been very good at in the past, of being like, you know, sexually creepy.
Yeah.
Almost. It's like sometimes he's pulling these expressions while he's saying things that give me like shivers up my spine and make me just feel bad inside, which is exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and he does it brilliantly. And like, he's emoting so well through all of this makeup that he's got on. Like the makeup is kind of incredible. That thing looks amazing when he's walking about with his big goat legs and he's got those big protruding horns coming out the front.
Yeah.
And you see him in like, when you see the whole thing in like profile, when he's like standing over the princess and like moving towards her, it looks great.
He was and he was in a lot of pain with this with this suit, because the horns actually made it very heavy, so it was hard for him to kind of lift his head up. And it's amazing that he gives such a good performance in it. But I did hear, apparently there is a story, again, another one of these production problems that they had, where he started feeling claustrophobic in it, as you would, I would imagine, and he was panicking and trying to rip it off. At one stage, and he managed to like rip a bit of his skin off. It doesn't really I haven't really found out much more than that. They just say like he ripped a part of his skin off, which I don't know the severity of it, but in fairness to Ridley Scott, or well, so he says anyway, he felt like he didn't want to put Tim Curry through a lot of this, and that's why it takes so long before the darkness appears in the movie.
He does a lot of stuff early on where he's just this sort of shroud.
Yes, yeah.
That is almost speaking for him. It's Tim Curry's voice coming out of this shroud that's going and speaking to the goblins.
And I mean, I think that's a smart decision to, when you have such an imposing and impressive looking antagonist. Reveal them later. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie's not good enough to lay the groundwork for that, or to kind of keep your interest. You know, it's almost wasted. And I honestly think if it wasn't for Tim Curry and the darkness, just everything that went into the darkness as a character, this movie would not even be talked about today. Like, this movie would just have been forgotten about.
Yeah, it is remembered fondly by people, and I think the main thing about that is that it is Tim Curry. It is this big sort of... Now, he looks like, I guess, what we would consider to be like a demon or a devil creature, but it's clearly based on like old pagan beliefs about, you know, he's like the king of the fairy folk or whatever, the dark king of the forest.
Oh, yeah. The fact that, like, from the very start... sorry to interrupt you again. From the very start, Ridley Scott, apparently one of the few notes that he gave to William Hortzberg was that the antagonist will be called the Darkness, and that was it. That's, you know, and he had to kind of build around this. So from the very start, they knew it was going to be the Darkness, and that gives you the sense that he didn't want him to be called Satan or the devil, or like. It's a subtle difference, but it goes into exactly what you're saying there, where, this is more of a folklore thing than a Christianity thing.
Yeah, because that's like, it's very much rooted in old pagan beliefs and not Christian beliefs. Things that have been, say, demonized by later Christians that came along with a view to exterminating the culture of the people that they had moved in on.
We touched on this before in the Irish folklore.
Yeah.
The fair folk.
Like
episode.
the idea of the puka.
Yes.
The puka being a goat creature, and like that's sort of what this is as well. It's like, in sort of later Christian dogma and stuff like that, creatures like that were basically demons. They decided because they wanted people who weren't part of the Christian religion, they wanted to be able to point to those and say, look, they're worshipping demons and are bad, therefore. So it goes into that, which is why you look at like this creature and you think, oh, he's the devil. I remember thinking that when I saw it initially and being confused by it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then later learning a bit more about it and be like, oh no, it's like that's part of old pagan belief. This is not a Judeo-Christian thing. This is a pagans and people like druidic folk, I guess. The things they believed lived in the forest and like were like in the shadows was like this. So this guy's like the king of the fairies or whatever is this thing. Yeah. And again, he's addressed as the darkness. But so whenever I was a kid, the first thing I thought was, Satan. But I look at it now and I'm like, no, he's not. He is still evil. Oh, yeah. He is irrefutably an evil thing, but he's not the devil. Although he does come out of a mirror in a way that was reminiscent to me of a movie that would be made later. Is it Prince of Darkness? Again, John Carpenter movie. A very similar scene in that to a very similar sort of thing happening, a very similar effect and a very similar like demonic type creature coming through a mirror like that, and it put me in mind of that. But he looks great. The creature design in this, if there's one thing I'll say about this film, the creature design is excellent.
Yeah.
The way it's shot is great. The unicorns don't look nearly as stupid as they should. Their horns wobble a wee bit.
Yeah.
Here and there.
It's been edited well enough. That they try to, you can clearly see they've like cut just before the horns fall off or something.
Yeah, so all that stuff looks good. The monsters look good. All the other sort of weird furry folk of the woods are all very well designed and stuff. You could tell that there's a lot of like things where like they've tried to make them comic relief.
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially the ones with Irish accents.
Yeah, well, the one with the Irish accent is the one who has booze under his hat, of course. But
which is only half true.
Yeah, so they have them in there as this. They're almost there as almost exclusively as this sort of comic relief.
Apart from Gump, who
he has a narrative purpose.
Yeah, he has a narrative purpose, and he seems almost like some kind of warden for the forest, or some kind of like he seems to have some authority.
He's in charge of. He seems to be in charge of all the fairy folk. They all seem to do what he tells them.
And honestly, I think he's one of the most impressive performances as well. From what I thought was a child. Yeah. And apparently, I read something kind of briefly. Went wait, and I had to go back. Apparently, the actor David Bennett was 19 at the time of filming.
Was he?
Yeah, which I cannot believe, because I was convinced that Gump was a small child, and in fact, me and my wife were kind of going, how is that kid acting like that? Because there's like a gravitas to him. There's a certain like way that he's speaking, and okay, like the voice is overdubbed, but it's the movement that he has. It seems too confident, and that's why it was a 19, and it works very well. Yeah.
It's kind of like it kind of reminded me a wee bit of Children of the Corn.
Yeah.
There is a character in that, he's Josiah or Jebediah, I can't remember what his name is, but he's like the leader of those kids. And he looks like a kid and is supposed to be like 11 or 12, but he's being played by someone who's actually like about 20.
Yeah.
Who just looks that way. And it's the same kind of thing where it's like, this guy is able to orate it with authority and all this stuff in this way that maybe a child wouldn't be able to pull off.
Yeah.
But kind of looks the part.
Yeah.
I think it works in the same way of like that. I find the Gump to be somewhat sinister in this movie a little bit.
He out of all of them, he reminded me most of like that you mentioned the puka earlier.
Yeah.
Where at the start, and again, that's what's so annoying about this movie is every step, everything that we keep adding on here just seems like a wasted opportunity. More and more wasted opportunities because at the start you're not sure about Gump, and he's getting he kind of cracks up at Jack, when he finds out that it's kind of their fault.
Yeah, he's raging at him, and he's basically like, he challenges him, doesn't he?
Yes, with the riddle, all classic folklore stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of disappointing because Gump's actually more of an interesting character. Like Jack doesn't really have a character as such. He doesn't speak much, which in itself isn't bad, but he doesn't seem to have much growth. There doesn't seem to be much of a like hero's journey or a challenge for him. He's always got this group around him that seem to be the ones that kind of sort stuff out, and like even that when they're trapped in the jail, and there's a weird scene where Una the fairy that's with them wants Jack to kiss her, and that's another character that I thought another actor I thought was way too young. I was like, oh, this is creepy. Why does she want Tom Cruise to kiss her? And she was 24 at the time. She just looks very young as well. So it's like, right, okay. No one is the age they're meant to be in this movie. But like it seems that it's everyone else that gets him out of things. Like he doesn't have that big challenge at any point.
They're doing all the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively.
He tags along to have like a bit of a battle with darkness, but then ultimately
he has a bit of a scuffle, I guess, with him.
But ultimately and again, it's not a bad thing. It could be done well.
Yeah,
that he's more or less there just as a distraction while they set up the mirrors and
the plates,
kill the darkness
and
with light.
They have that extended, just the longest scene of them gathering big plates that just goes on and on and on, and I didn't understand why we were spending so much time watching these guys frisbee huge plates to each other in this room.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they thought it would be fun for kids to see this happen, but it goes on for minute after minute of them just frisbeeing these big plates to each other. And like I was waiting for something to go wrong or for it to be building to something, and it doesn't. They're just playing frisbee for several minutes in the middle of the film.
Eventually, the cooks attack them, but even that's a muddled mess, and then they defeat them by like making the room steam up or something. It's that whole kitchen scene is pointless, and again just like a lot of the scenes just dragged on.
Yeah,
to the point that you just get fed up.
Yeah, I think this, as far as this film goes, I think the positive things you could say about this film is that it looks really, really, really good. The production design in it is excellent.
Yeah.
The direction, as far as on a technical level, is again like fairly flawless.
Yeah.
It's brilliant in that aspect. It's just that the narrative in it is disjointed and poorly paced.
Yeah.
And probably due to production problems and studio interference. Who knows who's going to blame who, whatever. But it's just like things happen for no reason, it seems, and it's like there's a lot of Deus Ex Machina stuff of whoops, we fell down a hole, and now we're in the place we need to be. Yay!
Even like when the whole thing when the goblins or whatever they kill the first unicorn.
Yeah.
It's even very strangely done where Jack's jumping into the water to get this ring that Lily threw away, and to me it was just very weird, kind of confusing edit where everything just kind of all happens at once. And to me it just didn't, especially because this is for like kids, it's almost like it feels like because he jumped in to get the ring, that's why this all happened.
Like it was somehow his fault.
Yeah,
or her fault for throwing the ring in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I could I could follow it and I knew what was happening, but just the way it's all kind of edited just made me kind of like,
Yeah.
take a step back and go, wait, why are they adding more significance to this? But I think it's this whole idea that, he jumps in and then when he comes up, everything's went to shit and he's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it just seemed a wee bit kind of clunky or something.
Yeah. It's the way the narrative is sort of strung together is not the best. It's confusing. Again, I'll say this film looks really good. Tim Curry is brilliant in it.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I remember about it from before I rewatched it again.
Yeah.
So, but as a whole, I think it's poorly paced and it is confusing and weird and nonsensical at times, and at other times you just like it's trying to be funny and it isn't. Like the comic relief feels really forced.
Yeah.
From all like the funny little like gnome people, and I don't know. It's just if there was more Tim Curry in this movie, I think I probably would have liked it a lot better. I think. Yeah. All right, well, we're knocking away these trials one after the other pretty easily here. So we'll just forge on and get into possibly our most, well, maybe not our most mythic, maybe less mythic on a mythic scale than legend, but pretty mythic. Pretty mythic and legendary with the creatures in this
definitely
one.
A lot more mythic than Beowulf.
Indeed, yes. Certainly wouldn't be hard. The full 1999's Beowulf, certainly.
Yes.
With Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
John, what did you think about Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth?
I absolutely love Pan's Labyrinth. It's what I remember seeing this movie when it came out and just being blown away. I mean, this is Guillermo del Toro at the height of his powers, let's say. This is him just after Hellboy, I think the first one. So he had already kind of made his mark in Hollywood, and they were looking him to do a lot of like superhero things and all this. But there's actually, again, I watched the like a few making of things, and I was reading up on this and found out that apparently he was initially going for the money. He was going to all these like Hollywood things, until he left he had a notebook that he was writing all his ideas for Pan's Labyrinth in. And he had been writing this from like 1993 or something like that. So quite a lot of ideas that he had collected for this movie. And he was in London. He left it in a taxi, and he thought that was it away. And to him, he thought this was like a sign of like, this is what you get for choosing the money over the art, kind of.
Like he was being punished by the universe for being greedy.
So again, like it shows you he's quite, superstitious. But the taxi driver found it. I think Guillermo had left his details in the cover, in case something like this happened. So it was returned to him, and that's when he went, right, I have to make this movie. This is a sign.
This one now, yeah.
And I'm sure he's very glad he did, because
I'm glad he did.
Yeah, so am I. It's like, to me, this and The Devil's Backbone are possibly my favorite movies that he's made. Not to mention, of course, his cameo as Pappy McPoyle in.
Of course.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Indeed, yeah.
That's the three greatest things he's ever done.
A really weird thing for Guillermo del Toro to have done.
He seems like a pretty weird, cool guy.
Yeah. And he showed up he was in that, what was it called? Death Stranding?
Yes.
That video game, Death Stranding.
That's right.
Just because he made friends sort of with the guy who directed the game.
Yeah, he kind of seems fairly like up for anything, really. He seems like a cool guy, but I'm assuming that as well that you've enjoyed this, that you got a lot out of this movie as well.
I think this film is a wonder.
Yeah.
I think this film is a beautiful film in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
I think it looks beautiful, but conceptually, it's maybe beautiful's not the right word.
It's beautiful and brutal.
It's incredibly touching.
Yeah.
It's so just. There's a word that I'm striving for that is a very obvious word that has just left my head.
It's funny how once the mics are on, like your mind switches off.
Like beautiful and sad. There's a very obvious word that means beautiful and sad.
Yeah. And don't ask me. I can't even say ethereal.
Yeah, and I can't quite grab it right now.
Yeah.
Poignant. Poignant is the word.
Poignant, yes.
This film is poignance.
Yeah.
Just distilled into its most solid form.
Yeah.
It is just it looks beautiful. The story is so constantly heartrending and hopeful and heartrending again. It's when you say brutal, my God.
So well, the story's very well structured as well, and
yeah.
It's like you can tell, like Guillermo del Toro, I have a lot of time for, especially with he puts a lot of work in. Like as I said the other, apparently his notes were from 1993.
Yeah,
and
that's wild.
The really cool, the really weird thing where he got the idea for this movie was that apparently when he was younger, he used to have these like it's almost like a sleep paralysis demon that would come from behind this grandfather clock in the room that he slept in, and it was this fawn that like just stepped out and watched him sleep.
Right.
I was like, what the fuck, dude?
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
But it made it into this film.
Yeah. So
that literally happens in this film.
Yep. So we should say as well that, you know, Pan's Labyrinth, the actual title of it is a wee bit. It's not actually Pan. They do.
No, it's a fawn. I think it's the translation from, because the Spanish title is like El Labyrinto di Fauno, which is like the labyrinth of the fawn. The maze of the fawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I actually used to know a guy who, if you said Pan's Labyrinth, he'd go, what? And he would act like he didn't know what you were talking about until
I had somebody who used to do that to me whenever I talked about Amelie.
Yeah.
Because like the original title of that is like The Fabulous and Wonderful Adventure of Amélie Poulain or something, but in French. And I was just like, you know what I'm talking about, don't be a joke.
I think it's quite telling that we're referencing these people in the past tense.
Indeed, yes. I don't know this person anymore.
Yeah.
I worked with this person and didn't have a choice.
But yeah, exactly. It's such an interesting movie, and there's so many. Like the characters, I feel are done so well. I've said this before, for me almost, you know, and it's different for everyone. If you get your characters right, you can take me on whatever journey you want.
Yeah.
And there's actually the character of the captain in this movie could have been done so over the top, and the actor Sergi Lopez does a fucking amazing job of like walking this tightrope of not going too comically evil, but
he's not Darth Vader.
Yeah,
he's not Darth Vader. He's not just doing the I'm the overbearing evil guy.
But at the same time, he's
subtle.
He's irredeemably reprehensible. Like he's horrendous, and it's a testament to Sergi and also the direction as well, because apparently he was told to keep his voice quite neutral and lower his voice down in octaves to get this menaciness. He never really
shouts either. He never shouts in this movie.
He's such a menacing presence. He's almost like the embodiment of fascism. Like he's almost not like a real character in a sense, but at the same time they do enough work that they give him all these like wee foibles. Like he is very meticulous and very fastidious. Like he's
always working on this little watch, his pocket watch. He's always altering it and cleaning it and oiling it and making sure that it's running perfectly, and he's using it to time people, and anytime anyone's due to show up, he's got his watch and he's like, they're 15 minutes late.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. And you're like, yeah, that is fascism. He is like this weird embodiment of fascism.
Yeah.
And they do actually a decent job of also humanizing him, which makes him even worse. Because he has this sort of like thing about where he cares about his son who's going to be born.
But that's a double-edged sword as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he cares about his son, but when he first kind of shows that, you're like, okay. But it's not long after that you see that he doesn't care if the mother lives or dies.
Yeah,
as long
he specifically says that. Yeah, he specifically says, "Save the boy."
Not to mention
choose
his complete confidence that it's a boy, because heaven forbid he should have a daughter.
Oh no! And like it of course, it turns out it is a boy. That's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah,
you know, that's not really relevant. That he was right about it.
Well, you know, but and his complete disregard for, like, once Ophelia and her mother arrive, he completely ignores Ophelia. Ophelia is not even on his radar.
Yeah, he tolerates her because of her mother.
Yeah,
and that is it. That's all she gets from him, is tolerated.
But and it's not long before you find as well that he's got this very fragile masculinity, you know, due partly because, I mean, this is all just hinted at as well, that he must have had a very kind of rocky relationship with his father, because anytime that the father's mentioned, he gets kind of cagey and he gets kind of defensive in a way. And this whole thing about the watch that he has, you know, his dad wanted him to know the exact moment of his death, because that's how a man dies, or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
But
some old macho crap.
Yeah. But he completely goes for as well, you know, and you do get this sense of, you know, he's very insecure, and
like a lot of fascists.
Yeah.
Like a lot of fascists, he's an insecure coward who uses violence to protect himself,
and like
from his numerous fears.
And he is the antagonist for this movie. You know, all these mystical creatures, all these you know, folklore things, apart from one in particular, the Pale Man, are all kind of ambiguous. They're all like, you know, you never really know what what his intentions are.
You never feel like, and Ophelia never feels like she fully trusts the fawn.
Yeah.
She's always questioning the fawn and being like, because there's something about the way the fawn carries itself and smiles that is extremely unnerving and makes it feel untrustworthy.
Yeah.
Is it'll say something that is just like telling her something, and then it'll smile awkwardly, and you'd be like, is it lying? It looks like it's waiting and hoping she'll believe it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. And then she doesn't know, and she doesn't know what to do either. And yes, as you say, the Pale Man. Oh my gosh.
And
one of the greatest movie monsters in history, easily. It's so absolutely horrifying. Played by Doug Jones, I believe, the guy who is he's in a lot of Guillermo del Toro movies.
He's in a lot of movies, full stop. But actually there's a very good like kind of wee mini documentary. It's only about 20 minutes or so on YouTube. This documentary, The Man Behind the Mask, goes through Doug Jones' career quite quickly. You know, it's obviously not getting too bogged down into the details, but he is a fantastic costume actor. He's a fantastic actor. Full stop. You know, he was in The Shape of Water. He was in the Hellboys.
He was in. I believe he was in Hocus Pocus. He's the he's the zombie guy in Hocus Pocus with his mouth sewn shut.
Yep. And like when you see him, you can understand. Like, he's very athletic. He's very fit, because you have to be for this stuff. But he's extremely skinny, which helps with these costumes, because that means they can build stuff and it doesn't look too bulky. It doesn't like
Yeah, they can have it look realistically proportioned
Yeah.
because he can fit into a smaller suit. Yeah,
Exactly.
like Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And like the first time you see the film, you think maybe for a moment, is this a digital effect? They got this guy swimming around. And no, it's a man in a suit who's holding his breath and doing all his lines perfectly, which is incredible. Now, he didn't have to do any lines in The Shape of Water. I don't think he spoke. It doesn't speak in The Shape of Water.
I don't think so, no.
But that film, wow. And his performance makes that film great.
And just to go back to his performance in Pan's Labyrinth, when he's playing the Vaughn, he learnt all his lines. He doesn't speak Spanish, by the way, so he learned all his lines in Spanish. He learnt all of Ophelia's lines, so he knew when to respond.
Of course.
All this knowing that he was going to get overdubbed in the end, but he wanted the performance
to be right. Yeah.
And even the behind the scenes for Pan's Labyrinth, if you've watched the movie, I highly suggest watching it. Again, just on YouTube, if you just like Google it, or on any DVD extras, if depending on what version you've got. But it's very, very interesting because the level of detail and the level of just commitment that everyone had, not just Doug Jones, but he like doing all this with the lines. And there's a scene where he's in the attic talking to Ophelia and he walks backwards and then he kind of ducks into the shadows and that's him disappearing. And the costume designers are actually kind of being, they're being interviewed at this point in the behind the scenes, and they're saying, we don't know how he did that because he couldn't see anything. He's on stilts. It's like one wrong move and he could have broke a leg, or he could have been in a heap, and all the while he's talking in a language he doesn't understand, trying to deliver his lines with emotion and trying to act while doing all this. And when you watch it back, you kind of do go, that's insane. That's and kudos to him because his performance is excellent.
He's brilliant. Yeah, he's great in that, and as like the way whenever he's the Pale Man, the way it moves is just horrible.
Yeah,
everything about that thing is horrible and unnerving. And then you see like they have all these in its chamber. They have all these reliefs on the walls. These murals showing you it murdering children really brutally.
All very kind of Christian iconography in his room. Like that's very much like the Stations of the Cross. Are almost done like that. The images you're talking about, those paintings.
Yeah.
Whether or not this is like a little jab at Christianity, I don't know, but that's what I took from it.
That's for scholars to decide, or Guillermo del Toro to just outright say
just
it,
brazenly go, yep.
Yep. So, I think the physical effects in this are brilliant. There's a couple of not aged so well CG things here and there. Like there's the toad that lives under the tree, which is the first sort of proper sort of out in the woods sort of monster or weird unreal creature that we encounter in the movie. There's bits whenever it's CG, it doesn't look too great. It looks forgivably okay, but it's got that sort of problem where you're like, the lighting on that thing isn't right.
Exactly, and you can tell when it's practical and when it isn't.
And when it is practical, it looks freaking great.
That was also that was also a production problem that they had, where she was initially meant to meet up with that toad in a big like open area in this like in the center of like this big like kind of chamber in the center of the tree, but they found that when they had it all built, this is after they had it all built and they had the toad in it. The toad looked really small, and it's like, shit, that's not what we're going for.
So we need to have her down. We had to have the room smaller so it filled the space more.
So they decided this tunnel structure, and they built that in 2 days. So you know, obviously must have been some kind of production problems that made them go with this, and maybe the CG was possibly rushed. Who knows? Or
yeah, maybe because he's not a guy. He's a guy. He does use CG now and then, but I've heard him talk about his CG before, and he's very open about that stuff when it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
If you've watched, as I have, the director's commentary for Blade 2, he is very, very critical of things that he is not happy with when he goes through that movie. Like, and there's a fair bit of poor CG in Blade 2 when they have like Wesley Snipes jumping about the place, and it's very clearly a rubbery looking CG Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
And he will just call it out and goes, well, that looks terrible. Like, yeah. If you're like, it looks like he's made of rubber. And they're like, yeah, he does. And it's nice to hear him say that. So I'm sure that looking back on this movie, he would look at that and be like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So
again, going to that behind the scenes, or the making of, or whatever you want to call it, of this movie, when you hear them talk about how Guillermo approaches these designs for the monsters, the likes of the Pale Man, he's got a very clear image in his head of what he is looking for. And if you've ever tried to kind of someone like us who, well, calling you out here, Kevin, that we don't have any, like, we're not the best drawers, or we're not very artistic in that way.
I'm not a fantastic illustrator.
Yes,
that's say that.
So if we're trying to like convey something to someone who is, that can be very difficult, and a lot of the times people go, yeah, that's close enough. Guillermo is kind of perfectionist when it comes to this kind of stuff, and they had to keep doing redraws, re-edits, re-illustrations, and when you hear the people talking about this, like, you do get the sense that there must have been times when they're like, fucking, but just what the fuck does he want? They're going back and changing these wee details, but you get a sense that they have a respect for him, and they appreciate that, like, he wants this 100% what he is envisaging, and like the likes of even Pan, or well, the Vaughn, sorry,
the Fawn, yeah.
He's not like, again, which separates him from Pan here. He doesn't have goat legs. It's like, it's almost like parts of trees, and like he's kind of like earthly.
It's like he's part of the forest.
Yeah,
he is part of the actual forest itself. I mean, it's his face has the goat aspect.
Yeah,
more than anything, his face and the hair on his torso.
Yeah,
I guess is goat like, but he does have the sort of the horns as well, of course. But yeah, you're right. He's not necessarily walking around on big goat legs. It's almost like they're almost like tree trunks maybe. A little bit like moss and stuff on them and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they had a very set image in his head of what this was meant to look like and what it was meant to be. Same with the Pale Man, same with the sets and everything. And this translates as well to his other movies like Hellboy, and there's very unique monsters and creatures in that are painstakingly designed. It is not just do you have a book of fairy tales flick? I will use that one.
We'll use this thing's got tentacles. Sure, firing in there. Yeah,
and it helps. It makes everything feel very unique. I mean, the Pale Man, there's like a, he is drawing from things. Obviously, there's the Japanese Tanome or whatever you call it. This is where he got the idea for the eyes and the hands thing. But he's drawing from things, but also making it his own.
Yeah, that's a pretty defining aspect of that creature as well. The fact that it puts its eyes in there's something so disturbing about that alone. There's just like, oh, and now it's ready to get you, and then it's like it's coming after with this like one hand thrust out in front of it to get a good look as it stomps after. Is just absolutely horrifying. So yeah, that thing's a nightmare. The toad looks cool. The toad looks cool when it's practical. Yeah. It looks at the CG on it's not absolutely abysmal or anything like that. It's you can just spot it immediately when it is CG.
Yeah.
The fawn, of course, is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And is the one that I guess we see the most of throughout the runtime of the movie as far as effects go. And then, of course, if you want to just talk about effects in general, there is a lot of violence that happens in this movie that is very disturbingly realistically rendered as well in practical effects, that is so effective and disturbing. I'd say that's the thing. After I saw this movie the first time, the thing that stuck with me the most was fairly early on in the film. There is a particularly brutal scene with a bottle and someone's face that is just... Even when I was watching it again this time, it made me feel really uncomfortable and bad when I was watching it.
I think it's that point in the movie that you realise, right, this isn't what I was expecting. Like, you kind of go into this thinking, this is like a fairy tale thing, only it's a bit darker, it's a bit more like for probably for teenagers or something like that. You know, it's and then once that kind of happens, because the violence in the real world, in inverted commas, in this movie is much worse than anything that happens in the fantasy in Ophelia's fantasy world. But yeah, you're right. That's when it all. That's all bets are off, kind of at that point. And you're like,
because the monsters are disturbing and all that stuff, but that is the most disturbing thing in the film. Yeah, I think is that scene, and any other sort of murderous violence that is visited on the sort of people in the real world, which you gotta like, and as well, there is also that sort of aspect in this film, which narratively anyway, I do like. Sort of, where it's like, is this real or is this her imagination? Yeah. And you're left kind of thinking, I think it probably is all in her head. By the time you get to the end of the movie, I am thinking this is a child using fantasy to escape the grim reality of what's happening to her. But it's done with it's sort of tender and sort of kind. It almost seems like a kindness to her character, that she is able to take herself out of the world and numb herself maybe a little bit to what's actually really happening around her with this crazy fantasy world. Yeah. But then there's also a weird aspect that I don't know how you feel about this, but there is a point where she is locked in a room. She's locked in her bedroom and she gets out. Yeah.
By using the chalk.
But she gets out by using the chalk to draw a door. And that is a sort of a nice little wrinkle that they throw in there, where then you maybe do wonder, is it real? Yeah. Is that really happening? Or is it just in her head? Because she gets out of that room.
Oh, yeah.
And like whenever they're going in to looking for her, they have to like break the door to get in. Yeah. So the door wasn't unlocked. So she got out through a locked door somehow. So I don't know.
I mean, even when the captain's chasing her, the maze parts to let her through. Yeah. I mean, again, yeah, there are, you could call it a plot hole, or you could call it just intentionally ambiguous, or the fact that the magic is real. This proves it.
Yeah, for someone that might be a confirmation that it's real, whereas I'm still unsure. I think
apparently of this quote, take from it what you will. Okay. From Del Toro, when he was questioned about the ambiguous ending, he quoted Kierkegaard.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and he
strap in, lads.
And he said, "The tyrant's reign ends with his death, but the martyr's reign starts with his death."
Oh, okay.
I don't think that answers anything, so
I don't think it does either.
It probably adds more questions to it.
I think I was asked a question and he thought, I'm going to say this, and they're going to sit there confused about it, and then we're going to move on to another question, and I'm going to be happy.
The best way to avoid a question, just quote Kierkegaard. Yeah. No one's going to question you after that. They go, right, fuck whatever, man.
No.
But, yeah. I mean... It doesn't even really matter in a sense, like everyone's going to get their the actual quote that he gave, or the actual answer that he gave before this, was he wouldn't want to kind of detract anyone else's view, or he kind of basically he likes that people come away with a different idea of what happened or what the ending is about, which of course is always good,
Yeah, it's great. Like he enjoys the sort of the art is in the interpretation.
Yeah.
Maybe of like, I'm gonna leave this, like, even if I didn't intend to leave something open, the fact that people are interpreting it, I'm gonna enjoy that. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil it. It's like how this weird thing to reference, but Tool, the band Tool, they have always refused to print their lyrics
Yeah.
in their, like, in the album covers and in like the books that go with the albums, because they like it. I think Maynard James Keenan likes it when people mishear what he's saying or don't know what he's saying, and people apply their own meaning to something that maybe he didn't even say. I think he likes to leave that even open to as broad an interpretation as possible. And I really appreciate it when people do weird stuff like that. I like that. No, we're not going to print the lyrics. Why not? Because we don't want people to know exactly for sure what the words are. If they're like listening to me whispering in the background, they can like
it means they can pick the cleverest sound in one and go, yeah, that's totally what.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say. Yeah,
just start like mumbling instead of singing.
Yeah. So this film, it looks, again, like, if we want to talk about in the same terms that we talked about Legend of like being a technically brilliant film, this is also a technically brilliant film. This film is beautiful.
Yeah.
Even when it's ugly.
Whereas
beautiful.
Legend looks like a fairy tale book, like an old one. This is like a darker. Like, it just looks so good. It looks like a nightmare at times.
Yeah, it looks like it. It's kind of like it's a fairy tale world that has rotten. That is rotten.
Yeah.
That is rotted from misuse, maybe, or like has old and decrepit.
Yeah.
All the fairy tale stuff in it is sort of maybe like molded and dusty.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, because it's like she's in this very harsh world where like fascism has abandoned that.
Yeah.
Has abandoned fantasy and people being creative and stuff, and like it's maybe been left to rot.
Yeah.
So when she's there, everything is dirty and musty and dusty in the fantasy realm. As opposed to like something like Legend, where you've got all the fairies and la da da, and like the super happy fun time music happening and all that kind of stuff. You do not get any of that.
No. And like even Legend at its darkest point doesn't look as dark as this movie. Kind of more or less like 90% of the time through. There's a few moments like that when she is in the courtroom, let's say, or the throne room. Sorry, not courtroom. The throne room, and all that, that's very lush and over the top. But other than that, or like, the Pale Man's room is very decadent.
Yes,
but
it is.
Almost,
but it's kind of as well. Like
the
food on the table doesn't look. There's something about the food on the table that didn't look appetizing to me.
Yeah,
it looked a little bit like it was maybe starting to rot.
Yeah,
a little bit, I think. Even like she's like the plums or whatever it is that she's eating, like they kind of look like they're about to like liquefy almost.
Yeah,
it's kind of disgusting too, I think.
That's one thing I did come across from the one criticism that people kind of levy on this movie is like, why does she eat the food whenever she's specifically told not to? Yeah. And I find it very like there are a few. There's like a Deus Ex Machina later with Mercedes, which it's a light one. It's like I don't mind it, and I kind of think this movie does the groundwork that I can forgive it. The very few misgivings that I think it has in it, but I never thought of this as one of them. I think because, and again, I know you're the same. Sorry for speaking for you, but I know you're the same. That we've read enough. Like fantasy books and things like that, where there's certain things you can't portray in a movie, and something like that food drawing you to it almost in a magical, otherworldly way.
Yeah.
How do you do that in a physical medium?
I have read books that have described that exact thing.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm transplanting what I've read elsewhere into this.
Yeah.
It's like there is and specifically in a Terry Pratchett book, there is a very similar scene to this. It was one of the Tiffany Aching books, where she has a thing called a drome that is kind of like lures you in to its sort of sphere and then has you sort of hallucinate in this sort of dream state where you think you're in this wonderful place and that you're eating this food, but you're just sitting there not eating anything and you're going to slowly starve to death. But yeah, and the aspect in that is that, you know, you're suddenly very hungry and you want to eat, and once you taste the food, that's you screwed. Like you're never getting out in that one. And like, maybe it's because I've read that I am so able to easily just say, well, yeah, of course, I completely understand that this child has been tempted into doing this thing that is clearly foolish, but also she's a kid.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too.
That's another thing which I think, you know, at different points since we've done this podcast, we both had a go at children, and the young girl who plays Ophelia is excellent, and she's written in such a way that she's a believable child as well. She's only 11. They actually were going to make her younger, but once Guillermo del Toro seen this actress, he kind of upped the age and changed the script a little so that it would fit in better. And she's absolutely brilliant in the role. But I also get the sense that, you know, you could maybe say I'm an apologist in a way, but I almost look at it as like she has to be disobedient, you know, for the kind of theme almost, like because she's railing against the fascism as well, like this, or the you know, so her being this like almost courageous disobedience of like going against all these ones telling her what to do and how to live, that kind of plays into the overarching theme. And maybe you shouldn't, maybe, you know, and in a lesser movie I probably would say that's not the fucking way to do it, but I don't think it's a major problem. I think you can explain it away in the ways that we have, where it is just, it's a fantasy world and these things happen. These, you know, these lures are always put out in these fantasy worlds to get you in trouble.
Yeah, she's this kid and she's got a wild imagination, obviously.
Yes.
So that, like, you know, she's quite happy to go along with the spooky fantasy aspects of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, so you can forgive that completely. And again, it's like you say, like the fact that this is such a great film and it's so well constructed and believable.
Yeah.
It's like you said at the beginning, you know, if you write your characters well enough, you can take me anywhere you want. Yeah. And I will go along with you as long as the characters remain consistent and their internal logic remains consistent, and it does. Yeah. Because she is constantly doing what, like you said, she's constantly working in defiance of others. She, like, her mum puts her in this pretty dress and tells her to look after it, and the first thing she does is go out into the muddy woods and wreck it.
And I love when she comes back later and the mum's all disappointed in her, and she says, "Oh, you've disappointed the captain more than me." And Ophelia has this wee smile, and you're like, yeah.
Meaning you're trying to say, I didn't really disappoint you, did I, Mum?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
You don't need to say it, but I know. Yeah.
But she's so happy with herself that she disappointed the captain. It's it's. I mean, I could go on I could talk about this movie for hours on end, because just as you say, like it's so good that the few minor wee inconsistencies do not detract from it. Where in a lesser movie, I would maybe be very nitpicky and go, that bit didn't make sense, and you know, why didn't Mercedes kill the captain when she had the chance there, and why didn't she do this, why didn't she do that? Like it you know, no movie's perfect, and this isn't, but it fucking comes damn close for me.
It's pretty close. Like, yeah, it's not far off. I think it's extremely well written. It's very, very well shot. Yeah. It is beautiful. The production design is almost flawless.
Yeah.
And
the sound design, the Foley sounds as well. The score is beautiful. There's a lullaby that is the main theme for the whole movie, and it keeps creeping in, and it's just wonderful, just otherworldly. It's a brilliant journey, and
it's like the opposite of Beowulf, in that Beowulf failed on all of these counts that we're saying, like, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And this movie is like the opposite end of the spectrum of like what a great fantasy film could be.
Yeah.
And what a great fantasy film. It's the two ends of the spectrum of what a fantasy film could be. Basically, here's this mess that you find it impossible to believe in, and then here is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film that is so easy to just fall into and get lost in.
Yeah.
I think it's a triumph of cinema. Okay, well, we've would you say we've successfully passed our 3 trials?
I hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so. I think we need to just sort of make for the sound of the motorway, maybe, and see if we're mazed or unmazed by the time we get there. But before we do that, although once again, this is probably one of those points where we sort of already know the answer, maybe a little bit. But John, which one of these do you think was the best of the movies?
It's pretty obvious.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, Beowulf was amazing. So
yeah, I mean, we literally had to rip ourselves away from the microphones to stop talking about Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, I had to just call that at some point because we would have been there for a very long time otherwise.
It's a very good movie, and I honestly think it deserves all the praise that it got.
Yeah.
And it did get a lot, and it showcases what a good director and a good team can do if they're passionate and they know exactly what they're going for and what they're trying to do with a piece of art. And I think the other 2 movies fail for different reasons. But like Beowulf, there was no passion. There was nothing really there. It's one of those. It's one of those movies that it probably kind of is forgotten because like we know Christopher Lambert's work pretty well.
I was shocked to hear about it because you told me about it during the course of us recording our Mortal Kombat review.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. You said, he didn't do the sequel because he went to do Beowulf.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, Christopher Lambert was in a Beowulf adaptation? I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I was genuinely like excited to see it. And then
which I think is probably even
Yeah.
more disappointing.
Yeah, I was excited to see it, and then I saw the trailer, and then I was excited to see it for a different reason. And then I was really disappointed when I actually saw it.
Yeah.
Because it was so just like dross. It was like, it doesn't, again, we said this earlier, but it doesn't have that much to recommend it. No. There's not a lot fun going on in it. It's exploitative. The music is god awful and doesn't stop when it should.
Yeah.
There is no like. I think there's one small part where there's like what you might call emotional music, but during other scenes where there's supposed to be emotional music, again they're just quietly playing the techno in the background, which is just so distracting, and it's very bad techno.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very bad music that is being pumped into the background constantly.
From the very start, yeah.
From the moment we get past the studio idents, it is just techno, techno, techno. It doesn't stop, and it's so bad, and it's so distracting every time it happens that it made me laugh a few times whenever I heard it, because the juxtaposition between what was happening in the scene and the music was so huge. The contrast was massive to the point where it was funny to me that they were playing that music behind what was going on. People having a conversation while there's just this weird techno happening. Like are they in like the chill room at a rave cosplaying? Is that what we're supposed to get?
I actually wonder, was this all filmed in the chill room? And that was just the music bleeding through the walls?
It's like a Renaissance fair / rave that they were at, that they filmed it at. It almost felt like, but yeah, it was ultimately, that was a bad film.
Yeah.
Legend was disappointing.
I think Legend was more disappointing than Beowulf in the sense that you have this already established, very good director. I mean, we both, again, I'm talking for you. I'm just going to talk for you.
So rude.
Multiple times there. But
I'll just bugger off and you do the whole thing on your own.
Yeah, sure. I know you well
just say,
you're an open book. John Carpenter.
Oh my God. John Carpenter's amazing, except when he's terrible. That's me. Just play that on repeat. Just have that on a keyboard or on a soundboard and just push that every now and then.
John Carpenter. We love some of Ridley Scott's movies, and he's a very accomplished director.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've said it before, like, Alien is one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
It is a very, very close second to me, I think, just behind The Thing.
Yeah.
Talking to John Carpenter. But I think it's wonderful. Blade Runner is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing piece of work.
And then Blade Runner, like, just to liken it to Legendary, or is it just to, just juxtapose it? Mm-hmm. It's quite slow, but it feels right, and it doesn't feel like it feels just paced properly. You're kind of discovering stuff as Deckard does, and it doesn't feel bogged down. Where Legend just it actually felt like they didn't have a lot of ideas, which is what really confused me when I kind of looked into the background and the production of it, and it was actually the opposite, where they had an abundance of ideas, but it's almost like they didn't know what to do with them, or maybe it was just taking too many drugs at that time and he was just going off on one. Just I just want a 20-minute scene of a unicorn walking about,
just running around in a stream.
Should we not edit this? No, make it longer.
Just leave it. Oh. Yeah, well, but anyway, all we can evaluate is the finished product that is put in front of us.
Yeah.
And the finished product that was put in front of us was aesthetically pleasing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But lacking in substance
and narrative. Lacking in like
pacing.
There's none of the characters have any real agency or urgency behind them. Like, it just kind of meanders about. There never seems to be much drama in it, in that sense. Whereas Pan's Labyrinth, I mean,
it's wall-to-wall drama. It's drama, and it's so well executed.
Yeah, it's just constantly, like, and all the characters are so well fleshed out. I mean, we didn't even really touch on Mercedes, who, if that's the right way to pronounce it.
Oh, she is a conflicted woman who is in a dire situation and is in fear for her life constantly.
And yet she actually at one point says of herself that she's a coward because she is, serving this guy, and she's kind of, she's undercover to help the resistance, and you're just like, what? There's like so few people who could do what you're doing.
You're looking at her from the outside, you're thinking that must be terrifying.
Yeah,
so her brother is basically leading the local resistance.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's huge. Like, if they ever discovered that, she would be screwed.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, when they do, this movie doesn't shy away from it. It doesn't show you them. It doesn't show you the captain torturing people too much, but you kind of see the aftermath, and that's enough.
See the result,
and you see it's doing it. It's not scared to show you it. It's just there's no point. It shows you much worse.
Yeah. It's not gratuitous when it shows you that, but it shows you that stuff to show you this guy is awful.
Yeah.
They don't need to show you him slowly torturing somebody, but they will give you a brief look at someone's incredibly messed up face and hand because of things he did to them. And then they do a lot of good stuff with him. He has this tedious sort of, I'm going to stand here and describe to you what I'm going to do to you thing.
Yeah.
That gets circumvented at one point later when he doesn't get a chance to even finish his stupid speech that he's building up to with Mercedes.
Yeah.
She just, because he's
that
really...
final line that she has with him is perfect.
Yeah, it's
and,
beautiful.
oh,
Poignant. Once
For-
again,
yeah.
poignant.
for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, just go watch it.
Yeah, don't.
Why would
don't
you even
spoil
listen to us?
that. If someone's got this far and still hasn't seen it, like, we'll not spoil that.
No.
But that is poignant and incredibly satisfying when she
Yeah.
says it. It's a wonderful, effective moment. So I think, yeah, there's no doubt in our minds, Pan's Labyrinth is easily the best one of these films.
Yeah.
On every level, it succeeds, I think. Now, what is the best film for teaching us about the, let's say, the denizens of the enchanted forest?
Ooh.
You know, the beasts and the strange creatures and sprites and whatnot that live within,
And how to escape them here.
and
as
how to
well.
escape them. Now, Beowulf. Let's get it out of the way first, because I don't think Beowulf's so inconsistent and silly. With that stuff to the point where
Also,
you're even wondering.
Beowulf. They've made the decision with this.
They have.
We foolishly thought Beowulf. That's going to be about these legendary type creatures, and
Yep.
no, this is a
No.
random steampunk world, post-apocalyptic world
Supposedly.
with some kind of beast in it. It's weird. And not in a good way. It's like I like weird. I do.
Yeah.
But this is just, there's no context for it. There's no reason for it to be this steampunk world. It just is. It's like someone just wanted it to be this, and that's why. It doesn't get explained. It factors very little into the actual
In fact,
story.
you could have exactly the same script, remove all of that stuff, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about stuff in those terms.
No.
It's like it was written in the original context or time period, but then we see things that are like, ooh, look at this steampunky thing and this big claw and this building with
This giant
fire for
straight
no
razor.
reason. This giant straight razor is going to cut this sexy secretary into for whatever fucking reason, who knows.
I mean, if
So,
that's your
all
kink,
that
go
stuff-
for it.
Yeah, So all that stuff is completely superficial.
Yeah.
Completely superficial. And doesn't factor into anything.
No.
It's not really about the legendary creature that it purports to be, or the legendary guy of Beowulf that it purports to be about. It's not really Beowulf. Yeah, again, they deviate heavily from the source material. They have a few weird references about like the removal of the arm and all that stuff, so that he can get at, because that's the thing in the original Beowulf. They can't get through the Grendel's skin in the original Beowulf, and he basically gets into a bad scrap with it and pulls its arm off, and that's what injures it fatally. It crawls back to its mother to die then.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, he uses his secret Batman Predator blade to slice its arm off, I guess. Even though they couldn't get through, but it's inconsistent with that stuff. They couldn't get through its skin with that, but then he just actually slices its arm off with his little blade that can, for no reason. And then later, the Grendel's mother shows up, and she's a weird porn lady who wanders around and tries to have sex with people.
Yeah.
And
Instead of the ogre that
Instead
she's
of
meant to be.
Indeed, yes. And yeah, all that stuff is just so deviant from the thing that it's based on that it's useless for teaching us about legendary creatures. Now, Legend does a better job than that. Certainly,
It,
there's a lot
it shows you
of
that forest life isn't as exciting as you kind of imagine.
living in a forest maybe kind of sucks. Yeah.
It's just standing about watching unicorns for a long, long time.
Indeed, yeah. But, like, I mean, it teaches us about, like, I mean, you got, like, the Lord of the Forest, who is vulnerable to sunlight, which is a weird thing in that movie where he declares that very loudly at several points in the film, which you'd think he'd want to keep stum. But he does walk around saying, "Sunlight is my destroyer."
Yeah, it's
I
like
believe
Superman
is a
flying
direct
about
quote.
going, kryptonite hurts me.
Just screaming about, like, I hope I don't find any kryptonite, because that's my weakness. Did you hear that, Lex? Lex. Do you know what
green
kryptonite
rock?
is?
Throw it away.
So yeah, keep that away from me, would you? Because it'll destroy me. And then Lex Luthor goes, "You got it, Superman." So yeah, it does do a lot with it feels like it's got backstory.
Yeah.
In Legend, there's all these creatures, and we do learn a bit about them, like Gump. Is this weird, sort of like a forest guardian of the forest, or whatever that he is. We learn a lot about him.
Honeythorn Gump, apparently.
Honeythorn Gump. Name? Yes. Yeah, we get exposed to a lot of things like the fairies and the way they behave, and the darkness and the goblins. The goblins talk a lot about how they're dicks.
Yeah.
The goblins talk a lot about how goblins are assholes, and they talk about
everyone's very
a lot.
open with who they are in Legend.
So maybe it's useful for that. I don't know. So I think it's between this and Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth, do we learn a lot about the creatures themselves?
I mean,
in Pan's Labyrinth?
Mainly because of the whole intent of it is that everyone's kind of not, you're not really sure. Everything is ambiguous in Pan's Labyrinth. Right up until the point of the end of the movie, you're not sure whether to trust Pan. The Thin Man, who knows about him? Who wants to know? He's horrendous.
Yeah. I'd rather not learn about him if I can just avoid him. That's fine.
I mean, even the fairies are like, the first fairy comes to her as a stick insect, and she shows it in her book of fairy tales what it should look like.
Yeah, or here's what a fairy should be, and then it sort of reforms itself.
Yeah.
To look like that. Yeah.
But I suppose you don't really get a sense then. It is kept. You're kept in the dark as much as Ophelia is.
Yeah. It's deliberately ambiguous with that stuff, which means that it's fun for us to watch it, because that makes it a lot more interesting and intriguing.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a couple of steps away from being a horror movie.
Yeah, and in fact, it almost is. At times, I would say it is a horror movie here and there. It's very much a horror movie. And it's a horror in several different ways of like, monsters, and then the monsters that people can be.
Yeah. Which, as we touched on earlier, are worse.
Yeah, definitely are much more. It's much more affecting.
Yeah.
On my soul.
I mean,
the things that people do in this.
The worst thing the Thin Man, we see the Thin Man, or the Pale Man, do is reenact that Goya painting, the Saturn devouring his son.
Devouring his son. Yeah.
That's like, and that's pretty bad and it's pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
But the captain, he's definitely worse.
I think we learn more about fascists and fascism and the people that identify with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And how shitty people can be. That's more what Pan's Labyrinth is getting across through the lens of a child who is obsessed with and loves fairy tales.
Yeah. Which we can identify with.
Exactly, yes. So that's more what that's about. Whereas Legend is, there's none of that in Legend.
No.
Legend is very much, here's the fairy folk talking loudly about what they are and how they can be defeated and destroyed and what they like to get up to. Really just, it's in your face.
And I should say, for anyone who has heard, there's like rumors that went about for years that, is it Miyamoto who made Zelda?
Yes, Shigeru Miyamoto. Yes, that's Zelda's one of his, I think.
Like, there was rumors going around for years that this is what gave him the inspiration for Zelda. Because you've got the forest kid, you've got the princess, and then you've got the big evil thing. But apparently that's all bullshit.
Fair enough.
Whenever you see that this movie came out in 1985 and the first Zelda game came out in 1986, it's probably like, that seems a bit too quick to come out with that.
I don't know if he would have seen it.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
At that stage. Who knows?
But
it's probably nonsense, but who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, it's very tropey as well. Like, it's not like Legend made all these two. They weren't
these
the first.
Were pre-existing things, which I guess is what makes it maybe more useful
for us.
For us, it's addressing all of these creatures.
Yeah,
that live in the forest. So sunlight, whatever, So I guess.
What we could do,
is
just play it for them, and then they'll all fall asleep from boredom, and then we can sneak off anyway.
Brilliant, John. Okay, right. Well, I'll set this up here now. I'll guess. You know what? I'll take the hit in this one. I'll leave my phone behind. I'll place it carefully on this tree stump here. Okay. And there we go. And we'll start this playing. Now, should we play Legend for them or should we play Beowulf for them? Which do you think? I think Beowulf might make them angry, whereas
I was going to say the same thing.
Put them to sleep, right?
I think if they weren't annoyed with us, Beowulf would make them annoyed with us.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is piss off these. Sorry, I keep going to say monsters. I don't want to call them monsters because, they might get raging. These denizens of the enchanted forest.
These legendary creatures.
So we'll just pop this on here. There we go. There's the credits running now. Okay. Gather round, furry folk. Gather round. Okay, right. Come on, let's go. Okay, right. As we dash through the trees here. Okay. That'll be all we have time for. We got to get to the road and see if we can bum a lift here. So we are on Twitter. We are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That is at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. If you want to email us, have a wee chat, whatever, let us know what you think. You can email us on filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. Bye!